Good afternoon. Welcome to the pre-application information session for the FY 2024 training and services to end violence and abuse against individuals with disability and deaf people program, which I will refer to as the Disability Grant Program. The Office of Violence Against Women, which I will refer to as OVW, is convening this information session to go over the FY 2024 solicitation for the Disability Grant Program. I am Daisy Jones Brown, and I am one of the grant program specialists and this year's solicitation point of contact for the Disability Grant Program solicitation. I have my colleagues on the call who also work within the Disability Grant Program, and I will give them the opportunity to introduce themselves at this time. Kara and Betty, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Betty McIntyre, and I am with a team member with Daisy Jones Brown in the Underserved and Disability Program Unit.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kara Mahler, and I am a colleague with Daisy and Betty on this program. Thank you.
Thank you both. During this session, I will cover highlights of the solicitation. However, this session is not intended to go over every aspect of the solicitation. All applicants are responsible for reading the solicitation in its entirety and ensuring that a complete application is submitted. The goal of today's session is to help you understand the Disability Grant Program, the requirements, and how to apply. The Disability Grant Program aims to bring together disability organizations and/or domestic violence, sexual assault, violence service provider organizations to collaborate on creating lasting changes within their organization. These changes should result in more accessible, safe, and effective services for survivors with disabilities and deaf survivors. Applicants do this in part by establishing multidisciplinary collaborative teams, which I will discuss in greater detail in a few moments when I discuss the eligibility and partnership requirements. Traditionally, service providers and disability organizations have different missions and approaches. This program seeks to bridge that gap and encourage true collaboration at the intersection of these fields. It is not about going out into the community or providing direct services. Instead, the focus is on internal improvements within participating organizations. The key to success in this program is selecting the right partners who are directly related to the identified problem. While there's no set number of partners required, past experience has shown that projects with fewer partners tend to be more successful. This program is unique and not intended to fund existing projects. Instead, it is about establishing a new project by going through the prescribed process, which will build a foundation for future safe and accessible services. It is an investment in partnership to ensure future success. The program spans 3 years and is divided into 2 phases. The first phase involved developing documents and following prescribed process outlined in the solicitation, while the second phase focuses on implementing the strategies developed in the first phase. Throughout this journey, participants will receive intense technical assistance from the OVW designated TA provider, which is mandatory. I will pause here for any questions.
Daisy, there is no questions in the Q&A at this time.
Thank you. I will talk about this later in more detail and how to apply session, but it's really important you understand these two deadlines. These are hard and firm deadlines for the application submission process. If you miss the grant.gov deadline, you will not be able to submit your full application in Just Grants and will miss the submission deadline. I highly suggest that you begin the grants.gov process as soon as possible to ensure that you meet this deadline. This will allow for sufficient time to address any problems that may occur. It does not take long to complete the grant.gov portion of the application process. Eligible applicants are limited to states, units of local government, and victim service providers. Applicants must also indicate if the project has a state or local focus. For state-focused projects only, continuation applicants may submit. I will say that again. For state-focused projects only, continuation applicants may submit. New applicants that submit a state-focused project or submit an application with an organization that operates at the state level is not eligible and will be removed for consideration for funding. A state-focused project must consist of a team comprised solely of organizations that operate at the state level, such as the State Independent Living Council, State or Tribal Domestic Violence, or Sexual Assault Coalition. Organizations that operate at the state level typically provide technical assistance, systems advocacy, and policy work. These type of organizations typically do not provide direct services. A state-focused project may concentrate efforts between organizations on the collaboration or focus on one or two communities within the state, which could be pilot sites. Again, for FY 2024, state projects are only an option for continuation applicants. A locally focused project must consist of a team composed solely of local community-based organizations such as the Center for Independent Living, community mental health organizations, rape crisis center, or dual domestic violence and sexual assault programs. Organizations that operate at the local level typically provide direct services. Grant activities will focus within and between the local organizations represented on the multidisciplinary team. Local focused projects can be new and continuation. There is no mixing of state and local organizations. They must be local or state. It must be either all local on the team or all state organizations on the team. If an applicant includes organizations that are considered to be local and state, it will be removed from consideration for funding. The team must consist of at least one victim service provider organization serving victims of domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, or sexual abuse, and at least one nonprofit, non-governmental organization serving individuals with disability and or deaf individuals. If the applicant is a victim service provider, then the applicant must partner with a nonprofit, non-governmental organization serving individuals with disability. If the applicant is a nonprofit, non-governmental organization serving individuals with disability, then they must partner with a victim service organization. I would like to also reiterate that history shows that fewer partners tend to work better because the changes we ask grantees to make are deep and not wide. This is easier done with fewer partners. Applicants must meet all three of these requirements. If not, then applications will be removed from consideration. For example, you may be a state organization and have all the required partnership, but you included local partners, which would make you ineligible. In that scenario, you must have all state partners. Funds under this program must be used for one or more of the 8 purpose areas. Please review the section labeled Purpose Areas on pages 6 and 7 of the solicitation. New applicants do not have to identify which purpose area you will use because the structured TA process will cover most of them. As a reminder, your entire 3-year grant period of activities will be following the prescribed process outlined in the solicitation. Continuation applicants must identify their purpose area and what they will be addressing. OVW does not fund activities that compromise victim safety and recovery or undermine offender accountability. Examples of activities that would not be funded are procedures or policies that compromise the confidentiality of information and the privacy of persons receiving services or partnering with individuals or organizations that support or promote practices that compromise victim safety. Please see the solicitation companion guide for additional information. OVW also will not fund out-of-scope activities. For example, research projects or surveys. Surveys that will be allowed are built into the structured process of activities we keep referring to, but surveys outside of this structured process are not supported by this grant. For continuation projects providing legal assistance, criminal defense of victims charged with crimes is not allowable. However, representation in pro-conviction relief proceedings is permissible with respect to the conviction of the victim relating to or arising from domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. Direct services. Continuation grantees may start providing direct services, but the grantee must have successfully implemented initiatives to ensure that services are safe and appropriate. Others out-of-scope activities are public service campaigns and projects that focus on children. These are not allowed. Food and beverage are generally unallowable. With this grant, you are not going to host conferences with food and beverages. Additionally, you're not to provide food at your collaboration meetings. What is allowed? A nominal amount of money spent on light refreshment for participants with disabilities for when you are doing things like conducting your needs assessment. And when I say nominal, I mean around total cost of $150. These costs should be included in your budget. In FY24, the following OVW priority areas are being addressed. Applicants proposing the following areas may be given special consideration. Please note there is no additional points if you choose one of the priority areas. Those applicants that propose to advance equity and tribal sovereignty as the central components of ending sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking by improving outreach services, civil and criminal justice responses, prevention, and support for survivors from historically marginalized marginalized and underserved communities, particularly those facing disproportionate rates or impacts of violence and multiple barriers to seek justice, services, and safety. To receive consideration for this priority, the application must propose to have an organization as a member of the team with a demonstrated history of using culturally appropriate and linguistically specific strategies to serve communities that have been historically marginalized and face barriers to accessing mainstream systems and service providers. Those applications proposing to address the priority area of strengthening responses to sexual assault must include a sexual assault service provider as part of the multidisciplinary collaboration team, and your project must have 100% focus on sexual assault. Awards will be made as cooperative agreements. Most of you are probably more familiar with grants, where you propose a project with activities, get your money, and just implement that project. This is not that. This is a cooperative agreement, a form of an award under which OVW expects to have ongoing substantial involvement in the award activity. Substantial involvement, what does that really mean? Substantial involvement includes OVW participating in project meetings, helping developing or approving final agendas, reviewing and approving faculty products and curriculum, and identifying participants. You must be willing to work closely with OVW on the implementation of this project and be willing to modify project activities at OVW's request. This is much more intense type of award. If selected for funding, grantees have a high level of involvement with OVW. Because this is an incorporated agreement, OVW has made participation in technical assistance mandatory. If funded, you will work intensely with the Disability Grant Program TA provider. New local focus projects are 36 months and the award amount is $600,000. Continuation projects with a local focus are for 36 months and the award amount is $600,000. Continuation projects with a state focus are for 36 months and the award amount is $725,000. Again, this year, there will not be any new state-focused projects. They can only be continuation projects. Deaf projects will be given an additional $25,000 for communication access. The $25,000 may only be used for communication access related to expenses. Applicants should not limit the amount of funds for communication access to $25,000 if costs will exceed that. We have a prescribed process for you to follow for this grant. This is outlined in the solicitation on pages 11 and 12. For new projects, you will go through 2 phases, the planning and development phase and the implementation phase. During the planning and development phase, you will be led through a process with the OVW designated technical assistant provider where you will create the following: a collaboration charter, a project focus memo, a needs assessment plan and tools, a needs assessment report, and a strategic plan. Upon completion, you will enter the implementation phase to implement your strategic plan. Some items included for implementation are developing policies around accessibility, developing training for staff, and cross-training amongst the organizations. You and your team will be provided technical assistance to support you throughout the process. It is imperative that key decision makers from all organizations involved participate in this collaboration process. Such individuals should be included in the budget. Typically, this is the ED, CEO, COO, president, or etc. for each organizations that make up the team. These individuals usually spend between 5 to 10% of their time on the grant. Again, the purpose of this program is to create safe, accessible services to individuals with disabilities and deaf individuals. It is through this collaborative process that a concrete foundation is built. For continuing applicants, you already know the mandatory program requirements. As a continuation grantee, you will have to do a critical assessment to ensure what you propose to do is still appropriate for the collaborative agreement. The TA provider is available to provide support to continuation grantees. Various TA opportunities will be offered. Continuation grantees must participate in OVW sponsored TA. I will pause here for questions.
Daisy, we have a participant who would like to ask their question live, and then I'll go into the Q&A box.
Hi, and I'm the Executive Director for the Arkansas State Independent Living Council. We are a silk, but we are not a state agency. There are some silks across the country that are state agencies. However, the majority of us are 501c3s. Can you help me understand or tell me how we would need to validate this? We're registered in SAMS, we're with ACL, Office of Independent Living Programs. And I'm just curious because we actually participated with this grant back in 14-15 when it was under aging, and would like to be the lead on it. But again, I want to know how we clarify that, because we're not a state agency. Idaho was one of our one of the individual states that we reached out that gave us information, and I know they are a state agency. So if you could answer that, that would be great.
So what is your agency again, if you would repeat that for me?
I'm a SILK. State is in our name. I'm a State Independent Living Council, but I am a 501c3. We're autonomous outside of a state agency. However, there are SILKs that are just a few that are state agencies. Idaho is one of them that actually kind of gave us meat and potatoes on this grant years ago.
According to the guidelines for this FY, you would not be eligible. However, I will allow Amy Loder to go a little bit deeper and give you a little bit more information about it.
Hello. So yes, Daisy is correct. The reason why is not because that you are not a state agency, that you're a 501c3. That's it. It's because as a new applicant, because you don't currently hold a disability grant, we are limiting to new applicants to having a local focus. So I'm familiar with SILKs, and so they're SILKs, and then they're the community independent living centers. So in this situation, if one or more of the community independent living centers wanted to apply for the grant with other local programs, they would be eligible. But because we are not accepting state focused projects for new applicants, that is why you would not be eligible. But you are correct. In the past, states have been, because Idaho was one of our grantees, and I remember them well. But So this year, we're not accepting from the states for new applications. Does that answer your question?
It answers, it's really unfortunate. None of it's centers for independent living. Centers.
Yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
ma'am. None of them are on here, which is very unfortunate. But we were hoping, I have 2 daughters that are deaf. So I'm very involved in the deaf community, the LGBTQ plus. And, you know, we were looking to be able to do this. Right now, I don't even know how to say it. I hope there's some people from Arkansas on here. Probably not. And it's sad. The deaf community need this so bad. I don't know. Hopefully I can find somebody. And, you know, and I write grants, and so does the individual that's on here from the LGBTQ plus. But he's
Okay.
you know, yes. And so it's really unfortunate for our state. We're usually
Sure.
the ones that, you know, we're fighting to try to get things. And
Sure.
our deaf community in Arkansas needs it so bad.
Well, I do appreciate your interest in it. What I can say is that this will be recorded, and
Okay.
we're going to be emailing out a link to all the participants so that you can share that link with other organizations and individuals within your state. So it might not be you who be applying, but if there are other individuals that might be interested in listening to the recording, contacting us, and then potentially applying, we'd be more than happy to speak with them.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, Daisy.
All right, Daisy, the next question we have is from an anonymous participant. The question is, are we eligible to apply as a continuation grantee if we are not done with strategic planning?
It depends. It depends on how far along they are within the cycle. If they could give their program specialist a quick email, and we could kind of see where they are to know if they will be eligible. That would depend on the time frame.
The next question is, hello, I was hoping to get some clarity on the priority areas. It was not clear if there is only one area, tribal sovereignty, or if it was more than one.
It is 2 areas. And so let me go back to that to give him a little bit more clarity. So the first area has to do with if they are advancing the equity between tribal sovereignty or partnering with a marginalized community. And the second area has to do with I lose my way. If they are partnering with, if they are 100% focused on a sexual assault. Does that clarify? There's 2 areas. They can be 100% project focused on sexual assault, or they advance in racial equity with marginalized communities. Anything to add there? I would say, Kara.
Hi, this is Kara. Was this the question about is the purpose area about tribal only?
Correct. It's two areas.
I think that the priority area that referenced tribal is actually quite long. So I just make sure it's not just about tribal sovereignty. It's about underserved and marginalized communities and more than just tribal sovereignty. That's one of the priority areas, as Daisy mentioned. And as she mentioned, the separate one is sexual assault. And either one of them are optional to do. But yes, to make sure that you fully have read the full language of the priority area referencing about the tribal sovereignty, because it looks like it's just about that, but it's actually about more and about underserved communities overall. And just to be clear, once again, and reiterate, no application is required to address priority areas. These are optional.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kara. Do the option. Okay, Betty.
All right, the next question. What if your organization is both a victim service provider and a disability provider?
So you have to partner, so it has to be two partners. It has to be a victim service provider and it has to be a non-governmental private organization, a nonprofit, non-governmental organization, local to local or state to state. So you have to partner.
Great.
I'm going to jump in because I think it's just a little clarity, is that there has to be two organizations, so you have to have a partnership. If you are both a victim service provider and disability service provider, you would have to choose which role you'd have to be and then partner with somebody else who's the other. And both of these organizations must be nonprofit, non-governmental. So every application must be with a nonprofit, non-governmental victim service provider and partnering with a nonprofit, non-governmental disability service provider at the minimum core. So again, if an organization qualifies as both, you still need a partner. So you have to pick which role you will come in as and partner with the other organization that fills the other role.
Thank you.
All right, the next question is, are there geographic restrictions for local partnerships?
Again, that one would really be depend. If you're talking a different state, then there would be restrictions because it should be locally focused. But if you're talking about a different city, that may not, that may be okay. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Like when you say locally focused, that couldn't be like a different state.
So Daisy, just to make sure we're clear on this question. So local partnership is like a city or a county or region, but not a state. Is that what you're saying?
Right. I'm saying that it could be regional. It could be. It depends, but it could not be if you're a local organization. Is this a local organization? It couldn't be a local organization partnering with another local organization that's not in, you know, that's not local. I'm trying to understand the question a little bit better. Is that Daniel's question who has his hand raised?
Yeah, go ahead and call on Daniel because this is his question.
Okay. Hi, Daniel.
Daisy, hi everyone. Yeah, that was my question. And really this comes from having to partner up with, because our organization really just services one county, but we're trying to partner up with another organization that services counties that include our county, but also includes counties surrounding our county as well.
Okay. So I would say that, Amy, if you could come back in with
Sure.
this question, because I believe they could partner, but I just
Yes.
want clarification.
Yes, no, and this actually is a question that comes up often. And so your service areas don't have to match up exactly. Like sometimes your service area, as you said, might be one county, whereas somebody that you want to partner with might be, 7 counties. They have a larger service area, but as long as you're both local focused organizations, you would be eligible. And if you were to receive an award, what we might do through technical assistance is just to maybe narrow the focus of your service agency, or maybe we wouldn't. But as long as it's not a state organization and you are partnering with a local organization, you should be fine.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Amy and Daisy.
Thank you.
All right, Daisy. The next question we have, it says, my organization, which is a Center for Independent Living, had a previous OVW grant that was active until October of 2023. Would we be eligible to apply for a new project with different partners?
Yes.
That's a yes?
Yes, it has the grant ended. The grant ended in 2023, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. And they can choose new partners as well.
They have to choose
To
new
choose a
partner.
new partner.
If you're gonna be a new, sorry, this is Amy. To be a new applicant, you have to have new partners. Otherwise, you would come in as a continuation with the partners that you had initially.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy. Okay, Daisy, we have another question.
Mhm.
Can continuation proposals have more than one priority area?
You can have more than one priority areas. You can pick from the two, or you can have a priority in both.
Great. Thank you. All right. So the question is, if target audience is persons with disabilities ages 14 to 25, would that meet the requirements?
If target audiences, you meaning not being in scope or being out of scope? Is this a scope question?
Yes, it's a scope question because you say you can't serve children, and I just was making sure that the age ranges of the organizations that serve persons with disabilities serve this age range, if that is out of scope because they start at age 14.
Okay. No, that is not out of scope. It's 11 and up. You can serve 11 and up.
Thank you, Daisy.
Mhm.
All right. The next question, it says, hi, I'm from Rhode Island. We have only one sexual assault and trauma center in the state. Is this agency not eligible because they provide services statewide?
If they are a state agency for this FY, they are not eligible to apply under this grant, this corporate agreement.
They are not a state agency. They provide services statewide.
This is Amy. May I jump in for a second? And I'm a little bit familiar with Rhode Island, but not totally. If we could have the conversation offline, I think that might be helpful because it's, I don't think it's a black or white answer. I think I just want to explore the gray a little bit, if that's okay. So if we could connect after this, that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And Daisy, I believe this is the last question I have on my end.
Mhm.
Here we go. Can the multidisciplinary team look at educational needs of teens and young adults if one of the team provides educational workshops, or do we need an educational institution to be part of the team? That's the first question. And then there's a second question. Do you want to answer this one, or do you want me to give you both?
Give me both, because
Okay.
I'm processing that one.
The second question is, can a new grantee develop educational curricula for workshops in implementation phase? In the implementation phase for traditionally underserved population? Does that include populations that are underserved because of religious reasons? I think that's actually 3 questions.
So I'll start by saying saying the grant, basically this cooperative agreement has a prescribed process that you will follow. You will follow that process in phase 1 and phase 2. And it's really not what they're doing, but it's about really moving through this prescribed process. I don't know if that is a little bit more clarity for the person asking that question.
Okay, that makes sense. If they don't, maybe they'll put something in the Q&A or jump on real quick.
I'm gonna just jump in 1 second because I know the organization that's asking. I want to be clear they understand what Daisy's saying. Is that like predetermined thoughts about things you want to get done to serve this as a new grantee? You shouldn't walk away from that. That's not what you'd be doing. That you will determine the activities based on the process. So like if you're already thinking about educational and workshops, like that would be something different that you're not allowed to do in this program. You're going to go through a assessment. It's all internal, looking at your own organizational practices, and the activities that you determine will be coming up through the assessments you're doing through the TA process and all the internal activities. But what you will be doing is working with your partner to look at yourselves, not coming up with activities that you'll be doing to the community during your first 3-year grant. I just want to make sure that you understand that.
All right, Daisy, that's the last of the questions. Oh, sorry. I should clarify, there's that third question we have not answered, Daisy.
Okay.
Regarding priority for traditionally underserved populations, does that include populations that are underserved because of religious reasons?
This particular grant focuses on disabilities and deaf individuals. And so it would depend on what they are trying to receive the funding for.
That is how I read it.
So if they are trying to come into this particular program under that category, it would not fit.
Thank you, Daisy. That's the last of the questions for right now.
Okay. So applications must include the required documents: proposal narrative, budget detail worksheet and narrative, and memorandum for understanding, MOU, with the applicant and team members signing it, and it must demonstrate the program eligibility requirements that have been mentioned. Applicants that do not include these documents will be considered substantially incomplete and will not be considered for funding. OVW does not contact you if a document is missing. The proposal narrative for new applicants. The proposal narrative consists of 2 sections: purpose of the proposal, which is worth 40 points, and who will implement the proposal, which is worth 30 points. For the purpose of the proposal, this is where you convey to us why you are applying for funding. What issue are you seeing in your community? For example, if you have a large deaf population and you're not seeing any deaf survivors coming through your domestic violence or sexual assault programs, that shows a problem. Or, for example, if you are representing a disability organization and you are seeing through your work several individuals disclosing they are experiencing sexual or domestic violence, and you see a need for response, that is a problem to be addressed. You don't have to have a solution. You will identify the issue. For the who will implement the proposal, you will identify which organizations are needed to best address the problems identified in the purpose of the proposal. The organizations of the project make up the team. There's no magic number in terms of how many organizations should be a part of the collaboration, but projects tend to work better with fewer organizations on the team. This allows you to go deep with the problem versus wide for more in-depth work. I want to reiterate, for new applicants, We do not want you to tell us what you will do, because there will be a prescribed project activities during the planning and development phase predetermined by OVW. Applicants should not propose activities beyond those. Typically, applications are evaluated on what you propose to do, but I want to reiterate, this is not the case here. You are being evaluated on the problem you identify and who you're bringing together to address the problem. However, continuation applicants should outline the purpose of their proposal, which is worth 20 points, who will implement the proposal, worth 15 points, and what will be done for 35 points. The what will be done section should come from a strategic plan developed under the original cooperative agreement. For your budget, there are some key costs you should include. First, you should budget for a project director. The project director should be no less than 80% dedicated, if not full-time, to the project. This person does not have to be hired already. In fact, if you receive an award, please do not hire for this position until your budget has been cleared and you have interacted with OVW and the TA provider. Remember, this person is independently assigned to the project regardless of what organization they work for. Because this is a capacity building project, the main people under personnel should be similar to the following: a project director, 80 to 100%, executive director or other key decision makers, 5 to 10%, and a key partner for the project from each organization, around 40%. There's no need to include anyone for direct services. Next, you must include costs for accommodations. This is for regular meetings of all partners. For example, if you have people with disability on your team, do you have costs for accommodations for their participation? If your project is focused on the deaf community and your partner is a deaf organization, did you include costs for accommodations and access for deaf staff participating in the project? Include these costs in the budget detail and narrative. Deaf projects will be given an additional $25,000 for communication access. The $25K may only be used for communication access related expenses. Applicants should not limit the amount of funds for communication access to $25,000 if costs will exceed that. During the first cooperative agreement, you will be doing an in-person needs assessment. People with disabilities and deaf people should be compensated for their time in the form of gift cards in the amounts between $25 and $50 per participant, generally around 25 participants. Applicants should include this cost in the budget. Applicants may also include the activation fee for the cards in the budget. Also include costs for OVW sponsored TA costs. It can be with the applicant or the cost can be split between the applicants and the team members. What you will not be including in your budgets. You will not be including costs for subject matter experts, trainers, or partners coming in later. You will not be including costs for outreach and training. You will not be budgeting to attend conferences. If anything, maybe at most, it would be appropriate to send your disability service provider partner staff to a conference on sexual assault, or vice versa. You may want to include one big conference on disability for the victim service provider. Such conferences should be rare and meant as a learning opportunity. and you will be going to conferences, you will not, I'm sorry, be going to conferences to present. Your partners must be equally compensated. When we say collaboration, we mean equal participation, equal accountability, and equal responsibility. That means equal compensation. You must compensate your partners in full and equally. So if you have 3 partners, everyone needs equal compensation. Team members are expected to dedicate 8 to 10 hours a month to the project. This should assist you in determining the equal compensation. The Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, is developed in response to this solicitation and where you demonstrate your formal partnership in one MOU. This is only for the team members, the organizations coming together as a team to do this project. It doesn't matter if you don't have a history of working together, because this program brings you together to build capacity. One memorandum of understanding that is signed by the entire collaborative team. Do not submit separate MOUs. Again, it's one MOU document with signatures from all partners. I will take questions, and then Valerie Cruzen from GFMD will brief on the financial slide. So we'll do another quick questions, and then we'll move on to GFMD.
Daisy, there's currently no questions in the Q&A box.
Okay, I will turn it over to you, Valerie.
Great, thank you, Daisy. Good afternoon. My name is Valerie Cruzen, and I am a financial analyst with the OVW Grants Financial Management Division, also known as GFMD. In the next couple of slides, we are going to focus on aspects of your application that relate to the documents that GFMD reviews. More specifically, we'll discuss some items that GFMD has identified from prior year's applications that could help with expediting our review process. So for today, we're going to highlight certain aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you with a link to a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included as part of your application. First, we'll highlight the items identified in the summary data sheet, which is completed by all applicants. Specifically, 3 items that we would like to discuss are the nonprofit requirement, the single audit response, and the IRS 3-step safe harbor procedure. If you are an entity that is eligible for this program based on its status as a nonprofit organization, you are required to submit a determination letter from the IRS recognizing your tax-exempt status. OVW cannot make an award to any nonprofit organization that does not submit a 501c3 determination letter. We highlight this specifically because applicants are not including this as part of their application and thus further delays our review. OVW also requests that all applicants provide a statement as to whether or not you have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during your last fiscal year. If you have, then you should indicate this and also specify the end date of your last fiscal year. However, GFMD is finding that applicants do not always include all of the information. So please ensure that this question is answered in its entirety on the summary data sheet. Another item that we'd like to highlight from the solicitation is specifically for nonprofit organizations. If you use the IRS 3-step safe harbor procedure to determine your executive's compensation, you're required to provide a disclosure letter. Please refer to the solicitation for further details and a link to a sample letter. Note, there are 4 required parts to this letter. The sample letter provided outlines all 4 parts of this disclosure. So please be sure to follow the sample and provide a response to each of the 4 pieces. The next item that we'd like to discuss is the pre-award risk assessment questions, which assists GFMD during their pre-award risk assessment review for all applications. Each applicant must prepare a response to all 11 questions, and each question has multiple parts. We've noticed from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the questions, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant and may delay funding decisions. Some of the most common issues that we have encountered have been, for example, question number 2, the applicant indicates that they do have internal policies and procedures. However, they do not provide the requested list of topics covered in those policies and procedures. On question number 3, some applicants fail to provide a brief summary of the organization's process for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditures. These are just a few examples, but in general, please make sure that you read each piece of the question and provide a full and comprehensive response. Next slide, please. So this slide will quickly highlight some resources that are available to you as you're creating the budget to be submitted with your application. Over the last few years, GFMD has developed a detailed webinar presentation on how to develop a budget to be submitted as part of your application. This presentation addresses some of the challenges you may face with your budgets and provides some insight on our budget review process. This webinar can be found at the link on this slide, as well as the link to the uniform guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR 200. Other resources include the DOJ financial guide and the solicitation itself. Next slide, please. We do understand that this is a lot of information to process, so if you have any questions, our contact information is here. Feel free to contact us at the number provided or by email at ovw.gfmd@usdoj, and we will do our best to get those answered for you. Thank you.
Betty, do we have any questions for Valerie?
I don't know if it's necessarily for Valerie, but we do have a question, and the question is, does the project director have to be at least 80% FTE?
Yes, 80 to 100%.
Great. I don't think there's any other questions on my end. I don't know if there's anyone with their hand raised.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. So to submit an application, all applicants must attain a unique entity identifier, UEI number, and register online with the System for Award Management, SAM, and with grants.gov. To ensure sufficient time to complete the registration process, applicants must attain a UEI number and register online with SAM and grants.gov immediately, but no later than March 13, 2024. This allows time for any issues to be resolved, which can take several weeks. If an applicant has an issue with SAM or grant.gov, keep a record of all communication. This information may be needed to present to OVW at a later date. Applications are submitted through a two-step process. Please do not wait to begin this process. The first step is submitting the SF424 and SFLLL in grants.gov. Submit as early as possible, but not later than 24 to 48 hours before the grant.gov deadline of April 2nd, 2024. See page 26 of this solicitation. We strongly encourage you to complete the grants.gov portion immediately. It does not take long to complete. Once the applicant has successfully completed the grants.gov portion, they may submit the full application. including attachments in the Justice Grant system. This is where you would upload and submit the proposal narrative, the budget, and the MOU. When you are on this tab in Just Grant, you will be prompted to upload each of these items. The proposal narrative is uploaded in the proposal narrative section. The budget is uploaded in the budget section, and the MOU in the MOU section. Applicants must also complete 3 questionnaires in Just Grant: the pre-award risk assessment, the applicant entity questionnaire, and the disability grant program summary data sheet. These questionnaires are not scored. Applicants should click on the questionnaire name in Just Grants to access and complete each questionnaire. Although the questionnaires must be completed in Just Grants, the questions can be viewed in appendices B, C, and D of this solicitation. Applications are due by 8:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on April 4th. Please note this is 8:59 Eastern Standard Time. Again, applicants are encouraged to submit applications 24 to 48 hours prior to the deadline. To recap, the SF 424 and SF LLL are submitted in grants.gov by April 2nd, and the full application is submitted in Just Grants by April 4th. If you miss the grants.gov deadline, you will not be able to submit your full application in Just Grants, and you will miss the submission deadline. I encourage you to begin the application process now. Please refer to pages 26 through 29 for information on the application process in the solicitation. Applicants who do not follow these requirements are at risk of not being able to successfully submit an application and being removed from consideration for funding. If you need technical assistance with grants.gov, you need to contact the grants.gov applicant support by phone at 1-800-518-4726 or by email at support@grants.gov. If you need technical assistance for Just Grants, you need to contact the OVW Just Grant support. The number is 1-866-655-4482 or ovw.justgrantsupport@usdoj.gov. If you encounter issues when submitting your application, it is vital you follow these steps detailed on page 28 of the solicitation. Please review the application checklist on page 33. All applications will undergo a review. Applications deemed eligible and complete will go forward to an external peer review and then undergo an internal programmatic review. It is anticipated that all applicants will be notified of the outcome of their application by October 1st, 2024. We cannot share any information about the status of your application before this date. OVW contact information for the Disability Grant Program is ovw.disabilities@usdoj.gov. The contact number is 202-307-6026. The Disability Grant Program staff cannot provide feedback to applicants about the quality of an applicant's proposal or provide any information outside of that presented in this solicitation. However, The disability grant staff will be available throughout the period that the solicitation is open to respond to any questions about the application requirements. Please feel free to send questions about the disability grant program solicitation to ovw.disabilities@usdoj.gov or call 202-307-6026. I will take any last minute questions before we get ready to close.
Thank you,
Daisy.
Daisy.
Mhm.
All right. First question is, for the partner compensation, does this mean 40% of the total grant?
No, it does not mean 40% of the total grant. It is essentially saying, look at how many partners you are partnering with and provide comparable or equal compensation for the time that they will be working on the grant. It will be equal partnership in the grant, so it should be equal compensation. But it's not determined by an exact percentage.
Great. Thank you, Daisy.
Mhm.
All right, and then the second question we have is, I cannot find language about the project director needing to work 80 to 100% of their time on the project. Can you direct me to that section of the solicitation?
When concerning the project director, this is an independent project of a collaborative agreement, and it will require a project manager to manage the project itself. And that particular person will need to spend 80 to 100% of their time on that project. And so inside of the solicitation, you want to know where we say that exact language? Is that the question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I will again direct that one back to Amy because it is not outlined that way, but that is the way that the project itself works. Amy?
Yeah, this is Amy, and actually I do believe it is in the solicitation, but I don't have the exact page number. It's either in the budget section or in the proposal narrative, but we can locate that for you in the solicitation and email you where it is.
Thank you, Amy. I believe it's in the budget section, but yes.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't want to give you the incorrect page number.
So please leave us with your information and we will give you that exact information on the exact page.
Okay, Daisy, that's the last of the questions in the Q&A box.
Okay. So before we head out, I do want to say this slide is OVW general information. As an office, we provide federal leadership in developing the national capacity to reduce violence against women and administer justice for and strengthen services to victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. If you're interested in knowing more about other grants we provide, please use the link on this slide. And unless we have any other last questions, that is the presentation.
I see none, Daisy.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate everyone attending.